Good morning. Happy Friday.
Okay.
It's another week is gone by, and it's amazing that we are we have only one more week to the end of May and the end of Coffee with the Farmer Resource Manager. We've hit over 40 of these. Hard to believe. Wow. It's great to have Rebecca King today. She's from Royal Oaks, California, and she'll talk about where that is in a bit. With Monkey Flower Ranch and Garden Variety Cheese. And again, she'll talk about that too. Because cheese is going to be a big focus of today's conversation, we're going to have a question of the staff about what your favorite cheese is. For some of us, it's all the cheese, but you do have to choose, maybe one or two. That's all I'm going to ask. So I'm Mary Kimball. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Land-Based Learning, and I'm in Woodland. And I do love all the cheese. I have pictures from when I was a kid eating blue cheese by like the knifeful with my grandfather. And my grandma and grandfather really loved all kinds of cheeses. And so I started eating all kinds of very tasty cheeses at a very young age. But my favorite has to be brie. Just like for anything, any day, I could eat it all the time. So that's still my fave. All right, Dana, on to you.
Good morning. I'm Dana Baker, coming to you from Red Bluff. I'm the Tehama County Farms Leadership Coordinator. And like Mary, I do like all the cheeses. I actually am a dairy science graduate from Cal Poly, and I worked at the creamery there. But I have to say that my favorite cheese is a really sharp cheddar. Sharper, the more aged, the better in my book. So that would be my pick.
Yes. All right, Joseph.
Good morning. My name is Joseph Montoya. I'm the Farms Leadership Coordinator for the Sacramento Valley. So there's definitely two at the top of my list, one of which is white cheddar and also pepper jack. And I'm just going to throw this one in there just to upset my wife. I also really like cottage cheese. You get some cottage cheese, you pour some Cholula in there, use some tortilla chips to dip it out. Oh. Delicious, super fantastic.
That does sound good. Okay, Katie.
Good morning. My name is Katie Wortman. I am the Central Valley Farms Leadership Coordinator in Fresno. And my favorite that we found is Joe Mattis Dairy Farm St. George cheese out of Santa Rosa. That's probably one of my favorites, but I love just cheese in general, with some honey and some nuts on a nice charcuterie board. And yeah, in itself.
Makes us all hungry. All right, Romy.
Good morning. My name is Romy Wattenbarger. I'm the Kern County Farms Coordinator here in Bakersfield. And for mine, I love all the cheeses, but we have a Basque restaurant in town called Wool Growers, and they have this one cheese. It's like, I think it's a lamb cheese. It's super creamy, and it's good with bread, and dip it in the soup, but it's probably one of my favorites.
I've had that one too. That is, I can't remember what it's called either.
I can't. Yeah.
Rebecca probably knows. All right, Letty, you're up last, and then why don't you also introduce Rebecca when you're done?
Great. Hi, I'm Letty Hernandez, and I run the program in Monterey and Santa Cruz County. My favorite cheese is Gouda, but I do love blue cheese in olives. Yeah. I could eat those all day. Yeah, so that's my cheese. But one great thing when I was able to try some of Rebecca's cheese as well, and so Rebecca King, actually, I met her through the Resource Conservation District. She actually serves on the board, and I believe she's the president of that, if I'm correct. Yes, the president. And she has Monkey Flower Farms and Garden Variety Cheese. She sells livestock for meat, and she has these really great pigs out there, and it's all in Royal Oaks under tons and tons of oak trees in this beautiful landscape. And she's going to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Hi. Sorry you had to mute the chickens earlier.
Pretty
So
awesome.
yeah, I have a 40-acre ranch in northern Monterey County, Royal Oaks. We're just outside Watsonville. We have about 30 acres of pasture. We have, primarily it's a sheep dairy. We're milking about 80 sheep right now. We have 5 more pregnant ones to go, and then we'll be at our max for the year. And then we have 4 sows and a boar. So at any given time, we have 2 or 3 litters of pigs that we raise out to sell the meat at the farmer's market. And they get the whey and the waste from the dairy. And we get spent brewer's grain from a local brewery that we feed the sheep and the pigs. And then we get produce from a couple of local organic veggie farms for the pigs. And then we also have about 400 laying hens, a few of which you can see behind me, that we raise for eggs. Most of them are out under some fruit trees. This is just our like household coop. It's as close as I could get to livestock with the Wi-Fi still working. So we primarily sell at farmers markets. We do 5 farmers markets a week in the Bay Area, and some direct sales to stores and restaurants, although the restaurants right now are pretty minimal. And then we do some direct sale customers, CSA type arrangement.
Cool. So I want to back up a little bit, Rebecca, and find out a little bit about your background. If you're from there, if you kind of grew up in agriculture on a farm, you came to it some other way, it would be great to hear about your background.
So I grew up in San Jose, definitely not a farming background. Probably great-grandparents is the last farmers in my family line. I got interested in farming at UC Santa Cruz. I did the environmental studies and biology programs there, and the sustainable agriculture focus in the environmental studies department. I did an internship on a goat dairy farm when I was a student there, and it's a really cute little 3-acre farm. They milked 30 goats and made cheese and sold at farmers markets and stores. So that really inspired me. And then, you know, over the years, pursued different things, went to culinary school and worked in a cheese shop, and it all kind of came together with cheese making and raising animals and selling direct.
Got it. Okay. So tell us, let's get into the cheese side, because I know that's always really interesting for folks to learn more about, including myself. When I go, it's like I relearn it each time. So tell us kind of a little bit of the process. So you talked about your milking lambs, right? I mean, sheep ewes. So talk a little bit about that, and then the process after, and if you make different kinds of cheeses, and you know, how long they're aged, are they soft?
Yeah.
All of that.
So to begin with, you know, you have to breed the dairy animals to get them to be in milk, which surprisingly I found the general public thinks about. But so for the gestation size, sheep give milk anywhere from 6 to 10 months. So we want to try and have fresh milk year round so we can make yogurt and fresh cheeses. So that means, sorry, my dog is trying to get in the picture here. So that means that we breed groups of sheep a few different times during the year to try and spread it out so that in the fall we still have some milk. But we still end up usually a couple months, like November, December, that we're not in production. But so this year we had some that lambed in November, December, a pretty big group in February, and then most of the sheep have lambed in the last month. We had about 40 sheep lamb in the last month. So we've got about 80 babies right now. So we make a variety of different cheeses. I found selling at farmers markets, having a variety of products is good. Because one person might only buy, you know, one type of hard cheese, but we also have a soft like cream cheese and a feta and yogurt. So we have customers who are buying multiple different things. So from the yogurt we can make and sell the same week. with the fromage blanc style, like cream cheese. That one, so those ones we make with a pasteurizer because they're fresh. They have to be pasteurized milk. So I didn't, to begin with, when I first started the business, I didn't make those because I didn't have a pasteurizer. It was only after a number of years of making aged cheeses, I got a loan to buy a pasteurizer because that was $25,000 investment. So a pretty big investment. But now that we have that and are making frozen yogurt, that's probably half of the farmers market, the fresh products. And because they, we can sell them immediately, and they have more water in them, there's less, you know, waste from them. They're really a higher return for us and a good addition. The hard cheeses, on the other hand, so those we don't have to pasteurize because we age them over 60 days. So those 4 hours to, and then they have to be pressed overnight and brined, and then the aging process takes anywhere from months to over a year. So the advantage of those for our sales is if we don't sell it this week, it'll still be good for another month or two. Like, we have a much more flexibility with our product, and we don't have much waste because we have a longer shelf life and time to sell it and all of that. But the you know, you have all of the whey that comes cheese. So you have a product that started with, whereas yogurt, you know, a gallon of milk makes a gallon of yogurt, but a gallon of milk only makes, say, a little over a pound of cheese, and then you have all the whey left over. So for us, the pigs are great because then we're not having a waste product, we're turning it into another farm product. But I found, for me, since we're doing mostly direct sales, doing the variety of products and kind of variety of strategies gives us a lot more flexibility. And then, say there's a week where we have a lot of milk, like this time of year, way more than we could sell in yogurt and fresh cheese. We're making a lot of aged cheese because then we can sell that 6 months from now, you know, in the winter when we don't have as much fresh product.
So I was wondering, where do you age your cheese? Do you have a special room or a cave?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't be too mobile right now with the Wi-Fi limitations, or I'd show you, but we have a aging cave. That's just the term for it, because originally people actually used caves to age their cheese in, but we don't have a real cave, but on the property there's a garage that was built into a hillside. So it's partway underground and it's made out of concrete. So it naturally stays pretty cool year round. So we put some extra insulation in it on the ceiling, and we hose the floors down to keep the humidity up and have fans going all the time. Because ideally you want, you know, 80–90% humidity and then about 55–60 degrees. So to do that, you know, to get special air conditioning and all of that, for it's a relatively small building, like 10–15 feet, was going to cost about $13,000. So we put in some insulation and some fans, and I've been using it for 10 years successfully without having to invest that money. People have been making cheeses for 2,000 years, and most of that they didn't have specialized air conditioning equipment. They had caves. So we make do with what we have.
Yeah, and then you talked about that you also sell meat, right? So that is, you know, and I think you said you did the cheese. I can't remember which one came first now. You said that earlier and I've forgotten already. Was the cheese was first or the meat was first?
Cheese. So no, I started with sheep dairy. I mean, we every year had lambs to sell, and I'd sell a small amount whole and half off the farm, and then lambs to other people who are going to grow them out as feeders. But then a few years in, we got pigs because we had the whey, and I couldn't find anyone to come and take it. And it's a waste product if you are just pouring it down the drain. And so then we, initially had one batch of piglets, and we were again selling whole and half animals. And then over time, the brewery where I get the grain from increased their production. And we, in order to have an exclusive relationship with them, so whenever we need grain, we get it. And then whenever they have grain to get rid of, we come and get it. We suddenly had more feed, so we got more pigs. So once we, got up to about 3 sows, we started selling at the farmer's market, which means we had to take the pigs to a USDA slaughter plant.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been doing pork at the farmer's market, I want to say 6 or 7 years now. And in the last couple years, it's really gotten more and more popular. So now we're trying to have pigs available, pork available year round. In the beginning, it was, we'd have a bunch of pigs, take them in, get them processed, sell the meat for a month or two, and then we wouldn't have any for a few months. But now we have a consistent customer base. We're trying to consistently have it. And then last year, we started doing lamb meat at the farmer's market. Because I hadn't done it before because the USDA slaughter, the price for processing the lamb was so high, it would have made it ridiculously expensive. That's why we had just done whole and half. But I switched to a different slaughter with a more affordable price structure. And I just, as a trial, priced the lamb at what I thought I needed to charge, and people are buying it. So they're paying, we charge $13 a pound for ground, but $30 a pound for the rib and loin chops, which are the more valuable cuts, but people are paying it, so we're continuing to sell it that way. And now with coronavirus, the meat sales have gone kind of crazy, and what would have been a continuous supply of meat for a number of months, 2 months worth of meat sold in 2 weeks. So now it's a whole different environment as far as the meat sales.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
And then we added eggs.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, we added the eggs about 5 years ago because there's never enough eggs at the farmer's market, and people line up, and they, with 400 chickens, we still sell out in an hour.
So I was going to ask you about, the impact of coronavirus and how the farmers markets that you go to, if you're seeing pretty much the same numbers of people, or are you doing more with the CSAs or other kinds of ways to get, or it sounds like you don't need to. It sounds like you're getting everything sold.
Yeah.
So
fortunately, all of our farmers markets but one are still going and have good support and have been quite busy. And over the years, I've tried different strategies, doing more wholesale and going through distributor and all of those things. And over time, realized for a small business like mine, even if I were to ramp up production, it just isn't practical for me to sell wholesale because, we had one customer that was buying our biggest yogurt customer every week, and then they stopped carrying our yogurt with no warning, 1 week to the next.
Yeah.
And, we're just not big enough to handle that. So I feel like through trial and error and through having been through, I'd say, crisis management over 10 years, I feel pretty well situated for the environment now because we all were focused on ships and selling direct. And we were fairly insulated from a lot of the disruption that's affected a lot of other farmers I know, and cheesemakers in particular. A lot of cheesemakers were just focusing on and shipping distributors around the country and a lot to restaurants. And a lot of them are really struggling right now to try and drum up direct sales. So we were fortunate, and that was already our focus. The big impact for us has been, I was focusing more and more on agritourism, tours, people coming to the farm for events. And so that's been really affected. But we are going to open our farm stand this next month. So we won't be able to have visitors and tours, but we will still get be able to sell direct to the neighbors.
That's awesome. And Letty just put up on chat, she was wondering if you could talk a bit about the things you do on the farm to support the land and the wildlife. And I'm assuming that's one of the reasons why you're on the Resource Conservation District.
Yeah.
Because that's important to you.
Yeah. Oh, well, and like I said, I studied environmental studies, and that's how I got into farming, was farming as a, as a organic farming, sustainable farming as a positive way to benefit the environment. And I've been really fortunate to work with the Natural Resource Conservation Service and the Wild Farm Alliance, a nonprofit. And I've gotten a number of grants through both of those organizations. So we've done thousands of feet of plantings of native plant hedgerows, which is really exciting. They're oak trees and ceanothus and all kinds of native plants that are designed so there's pretty much year-round something flowering for beneficial insects and habitat for birds and wildlife. We've done raptor perches and owl boxes. We have a pretty healthy ground squirrel population, which I'm not trying to support. So as many raptors and predators we can get for the ground squirrels, I'm happy to support the bird life. And we've also gotten some help with, erosion control on our dirt roads and runoff, because we're on a sandy hillside, fencing and other things like that. So that's been a really exciting relationship. And this is the third year I've been part of a Healthy Soils demonstration project. That's through the California State. And so we got funding to add compost soils to try and increase the organic matter and to lock more carbon into the soil. And that also paid for more hedgerows. I'm wild about hedgerows. And then as part of that, it's in conjunction with the Monterey National Marine Sanctuary, the woman who's been coordinating our project. And so they've been doing some testing of our soils and plants and other things over the 3 years to see how the compost addition, what effects it's having on the soil and the biodiversity and all of those things. And then we've had a number of field days as that project.
Awesome. I saw yesterday that CDFA just put out a press release that the amount of Healthy Soils grants, I don't know if you got one in this most recent round, I hope you did, but the amount of proposals was like, 10 times more than even last year. So it's great to see that
great.
So many farmers are taking advantage of the funding from the Healthy Soils program to be able to do the kinds of things that you're talking about. And I love that you love hedgerows, because I started the first hedgerow program in the state in 1997 with Paul Robbins, because Paul was at the YOLO Resource Conservation District, and we put together kind of the first packet of what plants to use, and Rachel Long and I did that together. She was the local cooperative extension advisor, and she studies beneficial insects. And so it was this the first grant ever given by the Department of Pesticide Regulation to study insectary hedgerows. So yeah, we love insectary hedgerows, and it's awesome that you're utilizing those.
Yeah, when I graduated from UC Santa Cruz in 1997, I volunteered with a local office at CAF, California Community Alliance with Family Farmers. And there was a guy there, Sam Earnshaw, who around in this area is the Johnny Appleseed of hedgerows. There's these gigantic 20-year-old hedgerows all over the place. So it's been really exciting to be able to work with him now, 20 plus years later, and he's done most of the hedgerow planting here on our farm.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because the hedgerows that I planted back then are now like like you said, they're like 25 years old or something. You're like, oh my God, it's been around for a while, but they're amazing. So we have a couple of questions. So I wanted to make sure, Shiva, I don't know if your voice is still hoarse. You didn't say whether or not. So we'll open up your mic so that you can ask this question, because it's a really interesting one, and I don't know the answer. So Shiva, hopefully you can ask that.
Hi, my name is Shiva Keller, and I'm a senior at Sacramento Charter High School. And my question was, what makes cheese sharp? Like, you know how it's like sharp cheddar, like what makes it sharp?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great question. And most cheese, people think there's a lot of different ingredients and things, but really most cheese has the same ingredients. You start with milk and you add a culture. Traditionally, people didn't even add a culture. There was enough live organisms, bacteria, and microbes in the milk that they would just work with what was there. But we can get cultures through the mail. They're freeze dried. They've in a lab isolated which cultures make what flavors, and so we can get freeze dried packets of cultures. So there are a couple different cultures that have slightly different flavors, but in general there's only about 5 that make every different type of cheese. So culture selection has part to do with it, but the other part is you know, the environments that the culture's in. So what the culture does is lactose. That's the sugar in milk. The organisms, they eat the lactose, and their waste product is lactic acid. So lactic acid, that's what makes it sharp, that acid. And then the lactic acid is also part of what makes the cheese curdle. For a cheese like a cheddar, the other ingredient you're adding is rennet, and that's an enzyme. It's taken from the stomach lining of an animal that's drinking milk, because that's what helps to digest the milk. You can also get a microbial version that's considered vegetarian. It's like a lab-made version of the same enzyme. And so that enzyme is what separates the curds and whey and makes it clump up and curdle. But to make a sharp cheese like a cheddar, we have one of our cheeses, Black Eyed Susan, that's a cheddar recipe. And the main thing that's different about that cheese is once we've added the culture and heat it up and let the culture go to work, and we've added the rennet and the curd is separating from the whey. For most cheeses at that point, then you scoop all the curd out and you press it into a wheel. And this with cheddar is you drain the whey, leave that curd in the hot vat, and you keep it warm. So it's a nice, happy environment for those bacteria that eat eat lactose and turn it into lactic acid. So you're encouraging more of that lactic acid to develop. So you're making it sharper, because that's the acid is the sharp flavor. So that's the big extra step that makes for extra sharp cheeses. And then after it's sat there for a couple hours, we measure the pH level to actually see that it's gotten more acid. And then we crumble it up and put it into wheels, press it, and then aces.
That is so, I always, like I said, every time I go to a dairy or a place making cheese or whatever, I always learning something new. So Shiva, great question. That was really interesting. Katie, did you want to ask your question? Because that's another, I'm also interested in that.
Sure. So I was just wondering, is it just you, a one woman farm?
Oh no.
Or what type of help do you have on the farm and at your farmers markets?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Because we do a variety of animals and a variety of products, I definitely need more help. I do know other people with dairy farms this size where it's just a couple and maybe one other helper, because they're just milking and selling milk to one customer. So they don't have as many different things going on at once. I have 4 full-time employees who work on the farm and milk the animals. I mean, milking the sheep twice a day is almost a full-time job. And then, taking feeding them, and different times of the year when we're breeding different groups, we have a number of different subgroups of animals. You know, we might have 20 ewes and a ram over here, and then another group that's being milked and another group of lambs. So that just managing all the sheep is a lot. And then when when the babies are born, we take them off their mothers on the fourth day and bottle feed them. So lambing season, the bottle feeding is a lot of work. And then, you know, there's the pigs and the chickens to deal with, and cleaning coops and going to get spent grain and all of that. So most days there's 3 people here, on the weekends 2, but they're pretty much all full-time and then some. And then I have a full-time employee who makes cheese and does farmers markets. So he's usually doing 2 markets a day, and then making cheese and cleaning cheese in the cave as it ages, because that needs, you know, someone needs to be scrubbing the cheese and flipping it once a week. And then I have a couple other part-time people, one who comes once a week and helps cut and wrap and package cheese and weigh it and price it for farmers markets and sort it. So that ends up being about an 8-hour job once a week. And then a couple people who just do a farmer's market for me. I'm actually, for the summer, looking to hire another person, because now that we're at our peak milk production, there's a lot to be doing with the cheese. And one of my farmer's markets people is leaving. And so, you know, it's easy. There's always enough work for more people.
Yeah.
And we'll be starting our farm stand at the side of the road once a week. So that'll be another half a day worth of work.
Definitely. So one last question for you before we'll let you go, Rebecca. And also I just want to say my sister's in Aromas, and so she and her family. And so I think I know generally where you are, but I look forward to coming and visiting, and she has a lot of farmer friends like Amanda Seeley and you.
Oh yeah.
So I'm kind of part of that group virtually. So I'm kind of surprised I haven't met you actually. But yeah, so it'll be fun next time I come, and hopefully after all of this COVID stuff, and we can come and see your place. I'm really looking forward to that. But Letty, do you want to ask this last question?
Yeah. Before I ask, I did want to say thank you, Rebecca. And we have some students that are looking for summer work. Maybe not full-time work, but maybe they can help you out a little. I wanted to ask you to share your story about why your farm is called Monkey Flower Farm.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, as I said, I studied biology and environmental studies in college. In biology, I focused on botany. That's another reason why I love the native plant hedgerows, because that's something that's always been a passion of mine. And so we bought this prop 2008. It's a hillside with oaks and eucalyptus. And when we walked the property, it was June, and there was a sticky monkey flower, which is a native plant, blooming on the hillside. And that's always been one of my favorite plants I named too. But, you know, because when we were at, you know, our first real walk around the property, that really stood out to me. So that's where the name came from.
That is a beautiful flower, a beautiful plant. We do a lot with that, with restoration as well, and planting and the hedgerows and other things, even up in this further north too. Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Again, like Letty said, we really appreciate you being prior to this, also being a host site for the Farms Leadership Program, and we hope that will happen again in the future. But for now, we're virtual, and we appreciate that very much too. And again, I look forward to meeting you in person at some point in the future.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.